Okay, I have completed a sock, heel, toe, upper end, and now it's time for me to finish up. There's a multitude of ways you could finish your sock up, but I think one without a seam at the toe is best, so that's a Kitchener bind off. And this is going to be based off of Brenda Meyer's pattern and technique that she figured out. I love the woman for figuring this out. So I'm going to show you how to do the Kitchener cast off with your sock. And the thing is, it is truly invisible. This isn't my nearly invisible. This is the Kitchener cast off. It just doesn't have the way she shows it where you're connecting two ends together. You're just connecting two halves together, which is a little different. So what I'm going to do is, it really doesn't matter if you want to pick up half the stitches on here and move over, or half the stitches over here and move over, but you can do it either way. I'm going to move this half over to here. So I'm going to take and put 28 stitches on my stitch holder. Okay, and then we're to the last stitch, 28, and honestly I'm just going to lift it up and put it over to the next one. Then I'm going to slowly start adding back in my stitches. On those 28. And be careful not to lose the stitch, because it can sometimes be difficult. So what I like to do is find my next stitch, get my hook in there, and put my finger to where the next stitch isn't going to come off while I'm putting that stitch on. So I'm going to pull the next one off, keep my finger over so that the next stitch doesn't come off the stitch holder. And I'm going to put all these stitches on. And you try not to twist them, but you'll know that whether you're twisting them or not, depending on the ease to which the stitch goes onto the peg. If it goes on easy, it's not twisted. If it's not going on easy, it's twisted. That's the best way to keep up with it. Okay, and as you can see, you should have 2 stitches all the way over, and that is where you're prepped for your Kitchener bind off. Now I'm going to show you how to start doing the actual sewing up, and this is where the whole trick is. And this is very similar, if you've seen it, to my invisible bind off. It's the same threading in and out, except for my almost invisible bind off, it's not quite like an exact Kitchener bind off, but the actual weaving part is the same. It's the fact that I'm doing on my invisible bind off, actually putting on and in between the ladder rather than actually putting on the original stitch. But with this, it is an actual Kitchener bind off, and it's the actual stitch. So it's the same thing. The weaving is the same thing. It's just the actual stitches used to set up the weaving. So what we're going to do is I'm going to explain that a knit and a purl is going, a knit is going to go from top to bottom, and a purl is going to go from bottom to top when it comes to going through the stitches. Now you're going to be working back and forth, back and forth, back and forth when it comes to your pegs. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom peg and we're going to knit it. Not the bottom peg, the bottom stitch, and we're going to knit it. Then we're going to knit through that top stitch. So you're going to knit through the top stitch. Now here's the other thing. You're going to be knit, knit, purl, purl is the system that's going to go. Make sure it's going like that so you can continue. Alright, so the next, we're going to go to the next peg, and the top stitch we're going to purl. So we're going from bottom to top. Now we're going to go back to the previous peg and we're going to purl the stitch. So we're going to go from bottom to top and we're going to purl. Now we're going to knit the bottom stitch on that second peg. So we're going to go from top to bottom. So we just did a purl, purl. Now we're going to do a knit, knit. So there's our knit. And the knit, knit tends to be on the same peg, while the purl, purl is on separate pegs. So there's my knit through the top stitch on that second peg. And then to start our purl, we know we're moving to the next peg. So now we're going to do a purl at the top stitch of the next peg, which is going to be our third peg. So we're going to do a purl, which is on the next, and then a purl is going back to the previous bottom stitch on the second peg. Now that's a thing to keep in mind. Your knit's going to be on the, your two knits are going to be on the same peg, but your purls are going to be on the next peg and the previous peg. So that's something to keep in mind. So now I'm going to do a knit through the next peg on the bottom stitch. So I've knit through the bottom stitch, and now I'm going to knit through the top stitch. Looks like I got the needle in there. Okay, hold on. Okay. Alright, so I've done the knit, knit. Now I'm going to do a purl, which means we're going to the next peg, top stitch, from bottom to top. So we're going to purl, and when we're purling, we know that we need to go to the previous peg and the bottom stitch and purl it. Okay, and now we're to knit, which is in the same peg, and we're going to knit that bottom. So top to bottom, send it through top to bottom on the bottom stitch, and then send it through the top stitch, top to bottom, so knit on the top stitch. Okay, so you're going to continue that all the way across, and before you take your loops off, my suggestion would be to go in and snug up your loops before you take them off. And because it's fine gauge, it actually does pretty well on not showing, so it's actually a perfect tension when you go ahead and you tighten it on the loom. And I would suggest taking your needle and kind of tugging on the next loop and pulling it. So tug a little. That tells you where to pull the next one. So you go back and you tighten them all up. I'm going to kind of lightly do that one. So you're going to go in and you're going to do this all the way across, and then you're going to tighten up your stitches, and then you can go in and take off the you can take off the stitches that are on there after you've tightened up your bind off. And so you just continue this pattern, keep continuing until you can't continue the pattern anymore, and then you'll know that you've completed it. So go ahead and get that much done, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I've gone in and just taken it off the loom, and there's my end bit, and as you can see, you can't see where the seam is. And no, I didn't go back in and tighten up. I tightened it up on the loom, and so that's what it looks like. Now keep in mind, if you're making socks on the looms, that the socks are going to seem bigger than your store-bought socks, and it's because it's a non-stretch yarn. But yeah, so that is the Kitchener bind off, and that's how you do it.